My name is Walter Brooks, and in this town, just about everyone knows it. They've known it for as long as I can remember. They see it painted on the side of the old hardware store, faded now but still readable if you look close enough. They hear it when someone says, "Ask Walter, he'll know," or "Walter, S been here longer than anyone." They nod when I pass by on Main Street, some of them waving, some of them just tipping their hats, all of them thinking they know exactly who I am. But what they know is only my name. They know I open up the store every morning at 8, even though I sold it years ago and only help out a few days a week now. They know I sit on the same bench outside the courthouse most afternoons when the weather's good, watching cars pass and folks hurry by. They know I live alone in the small white house at the edge of town, the one with the porch that creaks when you step on it. They know I'm 87 years old, give or take a year, depending on who you ask. What they don't know is my story. They don't know about the boy I used to be, standing barefoot on a dusty road, dreaming of leaving this place and seeing the world. They don't know about the choices I made, the ones I'm proud of, and the ones that still wake me up some nights, even after all these years. They don't know about the love I lost, the promise I broke, or the reason I never left town, even when every part of me wanted to. To them, I'm just Walter, the old man from the hardware store, the one who's always been here. And maybe that's easier. This town is small, the kind of small where everyone knows when you buy a new truck or when your porch light hasn't been on for a few nights in a row. The kind of small where people still say good morning to strangers and stop to talk in the middle of the sidewalk like there's nowhere else they need to be. We've got one diner, one grocery store, two churches, and more memories than I can count. I've watched it change over the decades. The old movie theater closed and turned into a parking lot. The train stopped running through years ago. New houses went up where fields used to be. But some things stayed the same. The courthouse clock still chimes every hour. The diner still smells like coffee and fried eggs at 6 in the morning. And I'm still here, walking these same streets, carrying a lifetime most folks never ask about. Most mornings I wake up before the sun. Old habit. I sit at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, listening to the house settle around me and look out at the quiet street. Sometimes a pickup truck passes by. Sometimes a dog barks in the distance. Mostly it's just still. In that stillness, memories come easy. They don't ask permission. They just show up, one after another, like old friends who know exactly where to find you. That morning, as I sat there watching the pale light creep into the sky, I thought about how long I'd been known in this town, and how little anyone really knew. And I wondered, not for the first time, what would happen if they did. I had lived in that house for over 60 years, long enough that the walls seemed to know me better than I knew myself. Every creak in the floorboards had a name. Every scratch on the doorframe carried a memory. Elena used to say a home absorbs the people who live in it, like a sponge soaking up water. I didn't know if that was true, but I did know this place still held pieces of me, even the parts I'd tried to forget. After my coffee, I pulled on my jacket and stepped out onto the porch. The morning air was cool, the kind that wakes you up better than any cup of coffee ever could. The sky over Main Street was just starting to turn pink, and the town lay quiet beneath it, as if it were still deciding whether to wake up or stay asleep a little longer. I walked slowly, hands in my pockets, toward the center of town. I had made that walk so many times that my feet knew it better than my mind did. past Mrs. Darnley's place with the blue shutters, past the old brick building that used to be a barber shop before the owner passed and no one ever took it over, past the schoolyard, empty now, but once so full of noise it used to echo all the way down the block. As I walked, I felt the familiar pull of memory again, tugging me backward. I grew up here, back when the streets were still dirt in some places, and the highway was just a two-lane road cutting through fields. My father worked the rail line, long days, long nights, coming home smelling of grease and sweat, but always with a smile for me and my mother. My mother kept the house and sang while she worked, her voice soft and steady, like she was trying to keep the world calm with it. We didn't have much, but I didn't know that at the time. To me, we had everything. A roof that didn't leak, food on the table, a warm place to sleep, and the whole wide world waiting just beyond the edge of town. From the time I was a boy, I wanted to leave. Not because I hated this place, not because I felt trapped, but because I could feel something bigger calling to me. I'd sit on the hill just outside town, watching the train roll through, its whistle echoing across the fields, and I'd imagine myself on it, heading somewhere far away. Chicago, New York, California. I didn't even know what was out there. I just knew it was more than this. My father used to catch me staring at those trains and laugh. "You've got wandering feet, son," he'd say. "That's all right. Just don't forget where you came from when you finally go." I promised him I wouldn't. I meant it too. By the time I was 17, I had a plan. I'd finish school, save a little money working summers at the hardware store, and then I'd be gone. I'd see the country, maybe go to college, maybe join the service, anything that would carry me beyond these familiar streets. I kept that plan folded up in my heart, like a map to a future I could almost touch. That was when I met Margaret. She came into the store one afternoon with her mother, asking for nails and paint. I remember noticing her laugh before anything else. It filled the room, bright and fearless, like she didn't know how to be anything but exactly who she was. She had dark hair pulled back in a ribbon and eyes that seemed to look right through you. When she smiled at me over the counter, I forgot what I was supposed to say. My face got hot, and I fumbled with the nails like I'd never seen them before in my life. She came back a week later, then again the week after that, always with some excuse, paint, brushes, screws, and always with that same smile. Before long, I was finding reasons to be at the store when she might come by, and before I knew it, my thoughts about leaving town were sharing space with thoughts about her. We started walking together in the evenings, talking about school, about our families, about what we wanted from life. She wanted to be a teacher, to go to the city, get trained, and come back to teach kids right here in this town. She loved this place in a way I didn't yet understand. To her, it wasn't something to escape. It was something to protect. "You don't really want to leave forever, do you, Walter?" she asked me once, as we sat on that same hill where I used to watch the trains. I looked out at the tracks, the sun setting behind them, and said, "I don't know. I just want to see what else is out there." She nodded, but her eyes looked sad. "Just don't forget about here," she said quietly. "Some things are worth staying for." At the time, I didn't know if she meant the town or herself. I didn't forget about here, not really, but I also didn't stop dreaming about leaving. For a while, I tried to believe I could have both, that I could go out into the world, see something more, and then come back, just like my father had said. That promise felt solid when I was young. Everything feels solid when you haven't yet learned how easily life can bend you in directions you never planned. Margaret and I grew closer as that last year of school went on. We'd meet after classes and walk through town, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying the sound of our footsteps on the sidewalks. Everyone noticed, of course. In a town like this, nothing stays secret for long, especially not young love. Folks would smile at us, tease us, tell us we made a fine-looking couple. I'd laugh it off, but inside I felt something growing that scared me just a little. Because the stronger my feelings for her became, the harder it was to picture myself stepping onto that train and leaving her behind. One evening, I walked her home and stood on her porch longer than usual, neither of us quite ready to say good night. The air was warm, crickets singing in the grass, the smell of lilacs drifting from her mother's garden. It felt like one of those moments you know you'll remember for the rest of your life, even as it's happening. "Walter," she said softly, looking down at her hands, "my parents want me to apply to the teachers' college in the city." My heart jumped. "That's great," I said, meaning it. "That's what you want, isn't it?" She nodded. "It is, but it also means I'd be leaving for a while. Just a couple of years, maybe. Then I'd come back." I smiled at her. "Sounds like you'd finally get to see what's out there." She looked up at me then, her eyes searching my face. "Would you come with me?" she asked. "Not forever, just together." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. That was everything I'd dreamed of, wrapped up in one question. Leaving town, seeing something new, and not being alone while doing it. "I'd like that," I said, before I could talk myself out of it. And in that moment, I meant it. We started making plans, quiet ones at first, talking about saving money, about where we might live, about how often we'd come back to visit. It felt like building a little future between us, piece by piece, in stolen conversations and long walks. I still worked at the hardware store, still helped my father when I could, still did all the things I'd always done. But inside, I was already halfway gone. Then life reminded me how fragile plans can be. It was late summer when my father collapsed at work. A heart attack, they said. Quick, sudden, no warning. I remember getting the call and running all the way to the rail yard, my chest burning, my head spinning, refusing to believe what my legs were carrying me toward. By the time I got there, he was already gone. Everything after that feels blurred, even now. The funeral, the people coming by with casseroles and sad eyes, my mother sitting at the kitchen table, staring into space like she had forgotten how to be a person. I'd never seen her so small, so lost. I was only 18, but overnight I felt twice that. The rail job had kept our family afloat. Without it, there was nothing but a little savings and a house that still needed paying for. My mother had never worked outside the home. She didn't know where to begin, and suddenly the idea of me leaving town didn't feel like a dream anymore. It felt like abandonment. I didn't tell Margaret right away. I didn't know how. Every time I saw her, smiling, talking about our plans, my throat tightened. I kept hoping something would change, that some answer would appear, that someone would tell me it was all right to go. No one did. One evening, I finally took her back to that hill by the tracks. The sun was setting, just like the day she'd ask me if I really wanted to leave. The train whistle sounded in the distance, low and mournful. "I can't go," I said, before she even had a chance to speak. She looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "My father's gone," I said. "My mother, she needs me. I can't leave her like that. I just can't." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she sat down in the grass, her shoulders sagging. "So that's it?" she asked quietly, just like that. "I'm sorry," I said. "I really am. I thought I could, but I can't." She looked up at me then, and there were tears in her eyes. "You promised," she whispered. I had no answer for that. We sat there for a long time, the space between us growing heavier with every passing minute. When she finally stood up, she wiped her eyes and said, "I still have to go, Walter. I can't give up my dreams, not even for you." I nodded, even though it felt like my chest was caving in. "I know," I said. "You shouldn't." We didn't say much after that. What was there to say? Some goodbyes don't come with speeches. They just come with silence and a shared understanding that something beautiful is ending, whether you're ready or not. She left town a week later. I watched her climb onto the bus from across the street, her suitcase at her feet, her hair pulled back with that same ribbon. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and just chose not to look. I've never known which would hurt less. After that, I stayed. I took on more hours at the hardware store. I helped my mother with the bills. I fixed things around the house, learned how to do the jobs my father used to handle. I told myself this was just for a while, that once things settled, once my mother found her footing, I could still go. But weeks turned into months, months into years, and before I knew it, the idea of leaving felt less like a plan and more like a story I used to tell myself. Margaret wrote at first, letters from the city, full of excitement and new experiences. She told me about her classes, her roommates, the busy streets and tall buildings. I wrote back, too, careful not to sound too sad, careful not to let her know how much I missed her. But as time went on, the letters came less often. Then they stopped. I heard years later that she had married someone she met there, had children, built a life. I hope she was happy. As for me, I became Walter Brooks, the man who never left town. People saw me grow older here, saw me take over the hardware store when the owner retired, saw me buy my little white house, saw me care for my mother until she passed. They saw the shape of my life, the outline of it. What they never saw were the roads I almost took, the train I never boarded, the girl I loved and let go, and the secret I never told anyone. Because staying didn't just cost me a dream. It cost me a future I never learned how to imagine again. I stayed, and life kept moving whether I was ready for it or not. After my mother passed, the house felt emptier than I ever thought possible. First my father, then Margaret, and now her too. Three losses that came one after another, like waves that didn't give me time to catch my breath in between. I was only in my early 20s, but I felt much older. The kind of old you become when you realize that the world doesn't slow down just because your heart is tired. The hardware store became my anchor. Old Mr. Peterson, who had owned it forever, saw how often I was there and eventually offered me more hours than a steady position. He liked my work ethic, he said, trusted me. By the time he retired a few years later, he offered to sell it to me cheap. You've already been running the place, he told me. Might as well make it official. I didn't have much money, but I took out a loan and said yes. It felt like something solid in a life that had lost too many solid things already. Owning that store made me part of the town in a way I hadn't been before. People came to me for nails, paint, tools, advice. They'd lean on the counter and talk about their days, their kids, their worries. I learned the rhythm of their lives just by listening. Who was getting married, who was sick, who was thinking of moving away. And they learned mine, at least the parts I let them see. Hardworking, reliable, quiet, always there when you needed him. That was when my name really started to stick. Ask Walter. Walter'll know. Walter's got it, if anyone does. It felt good being needed. After so much loss, it felt like proof that I still mattered to someone. Years passed, then more years. Faces in town changed. Some folks moved away, some passed on. New families came in, but I stayed, always stayed. I watched kids grow up and start families of their own. I watched storefronts open and close. I watched the paint on my own sign fade a little more each summer. People would sometimes ask me why I never married. I always had an answer ready. Just never found the right one, I'd say with a shrug, or guess I was married to the store. They'd laugh, nod like that made sense, and move on. In a small town, folks don't like to push too hard. Everyone's got something they don't talk about. What I didn't say was that after Margaret left, I never really looked again. Oh, there were chances. There's always chances if you're willing to see them. A kind widow who used to stop by for conversation more than supplies. A teacher new in town who smiled a little too long when we talked. A woman from church who invited me to sit beside her every Sunday. I noticed. I just couldn't step into it. Every time I thought about letting someone get close, I felt that old ache rise up again, and I told myself it was easier to be alone than to risk losing someone all over again. So I stayed alone. And in that quiet space, the secret I carried had room to grow. Because Margaret wasn't the only thing I left behind on that hill by the tracks. There was more. Much more. I was in my mid-twenties when the letter came. A plain white envelope, no return address I recognized. I almost tossed it aside with the bills until I saw her handwriting. I knew it instantly, even after all those years. Careful, slanted just a bit. My hands started to shake before I even opened it. Walter. I don't know if you'll want to hear from me after all this time, but I don't know who else to write to. I've thought about you every winter since I left. I hope you're well. I hope your mother was okay. I hope you found your way. There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you long ago. I had to sit down before I could read any further. She wrote about her life in the city, about college, about meeting someone kind, about building a family. And then halfway through the page, the words changed, grew heavier, more careful. Walter, before I left town, I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared. And then when everything happened with your father, it didn't seem right. But I should have said something. I should have let you decide, too. I'm sorry. I have a son. He was born that spring, not long after I left. I stared at those words until they blurred. A son. My son. She wrote that she hadn't been sure at first, that she had wondered, hoped, prayed it might not be. But in her heart, she knew. She said she hadn't wanted to burden me when my life was already falling apart, that she had told herself it was better this way, that her husband, years later, had raised the boy as his own, never knowing the truth. His name is Daniel, she wrote. He's a good boy, kind, thoughtful. He doesn't know about you, and I don't think he ever should. I just couldn't keep carrying this alone anymore. I needed you to know. I read that letter more times than I can count. My mind racing, my chest tight, my hands cold. I felt shock, anger, grief, and something else too, something that took me longer to name. Love. Love for a child I had never seen, never held, never known. I wanted to run, to catch the next bus to wherever she was, to see him, to tell her she was wrong, that I should have had the choice, that I would have stayed anyway, that I would have found a way. But then the fear came. What right did I have to step into a life that was already built? What good would it do to tear open a truth that could only hurt the people living it? And what would I say after all that time? I stayed, like I always did. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box with my most important papers. And I told no one, not a soul. From that day on, every winter felt different. Every time I saw a boy about the right age walking down Main Street with his parents, my heart would twist. Every time I watched someone teach their son to ride a bike or toss a ball in the yard, I wondered what mine looked like, what his laugh sounded like, whether he had my eyes, my stubborn streak, whether he ever stood by a window and felt like something was missing without knowing why. But I never went. I stayed Walter Brooks, the man everyone knew by name, and the father no one ever knew existed. The years after that letter passed more slowly than all the ones before it, or maybe they only felt that way because I was counting them differently now. Before, I had counted time by seasons, by how often the sign on the store needed repainting, by how many times the courthouse clock chimed through another year. After I learned about Daniel, I started counting in questions. How old would he be now? Would he be starting school? Would he like books? Would he be tall? Would he look like her or like me? Every birthday of mine brought another quiet calculation. If I was 30, he would be 5. If I was 40, he would be 15. If I was 50, he would be 25. The numbers grew, and with them grew the strange feeling of knowing someone so deeply in your heart while knowing nothing about their life at all. I imagined him at every stage. A little boy with skinned knees and a stubborn streak. A teenager slamming doors, thinking he knew everything. A young man trying to find his place in the world. I wondered if he ever stood on a hill somewhere, watching trains or buses, dreaming of leaving his own town. I wondered if he ever felt that quiet pull of something more without knowing where it came from. Sometimes, late at night, I would take out Margaret's letter and read it again, just to remind myself it was real, that I hadn't dreamed it. I kept it folded in the same place, the paper growing softer with time, the ink fading just a little. It was the only proof I had that my story was larger than what anyone here could see. I never wrote back. I don't know if she expected me to. Maybe she hoped I would. Maybe she just needed to say it once to finally let the truth leave her heart. I told myself that if she wanted more, she would write again. She never did. Years later, I heard through someone passing through town that she had died. Illness, they said. I never knew if it was true, but I felt it was. That chapter of my life seemed to close as quietly as it had opened. And so I carried on. The store kept me busy. That was a blessing. When you're busy, you don't have as much time to think. I opened up early, closed late, took on extra work when I could. I became the man people relied on when something broke, when they needed advice, when they just wanted someone to listen for a few minutes. I let their lives fill the spaces where mine felt too empty. Before I knew it, my hair began to gray. My back started to ache when I bent down too long. The young men who came into the store for tools looked at me with the same mix of respect and distance I used to give the old-timers when I was their age. I watched myself become what I had always known here, one of the fixtures, like the courthouse clerk, like the old oak tree in front of the library, just something that had always been there. Eventually, I sold the store to a younger couple, folks with energy and plans and bright ideas about how to modernize it. They asked me to stay on part-time, said it wouldn't be the same without me there. I agreed, partly because the money helped, and partly because I didn't know what I would do with myself if I didn't have a place to go each morning. That's when the bench outside the courthouse became my afternoon home. I'd sit there, watching the town move around me, feeling like I was both part of it and somehow outside of it at the same time. People would stop to chat. Kids would ask me questions about what the town used to be like back in the old days. Tourists passing through would ask for directions, and I'd smile and answer, keeping my voice light, my story hidden. But inside, the questions never stopped. Did Daniel know he was adopted? Did he ever wonder about the man who helped bring him into this world? Did he live in a town like mine, where everyone knew his name? Or was he in some big city, just another face in a crowd? Did he have children of his own now? Was I a grandfather somewhere, without even knowing it? The thought used to hurt too much. But as I grew older, the pain softened into something quieter, a deep, steady ache that lived with me, not against me. I got used to it, just another part of who I was. By the time I turned 80, my world had grown small. The store, the bench, the house, the grocery store, the church on Sundays. That was about it. Most of the friends I had grown up with were gone now, buried in the little cemetery on the edge of town, their names carved into stones I passed whenever I walked there to pay my respects. Sometimes I'd stand there and talk to them, telling them about the weather, about the town, about how strange it felt to be one of the last ones left. You should see it now, I'd say. You wouldn't recognize half of it, but it's still home. And always, I'd add silently, it's still all I have. Then, one afternoon not long ago, something happened that shook that quiet rhythm of my days. I was sitting on my usual bench outside the courthouse, the sun warm on my face, watching a couple of kids toss a football back and forth in the street. The air smelled like cut grass, and for a moment I felt almost peaceful. That's when a car I didn't recognize pulled up across the street. It was a newer model, dark blue, with out-of-state plates. It sat there for a second, engine running, as if the driver were gathering courage. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He wasn't young, not really. Maybe in his late 50s, gray at the temples, broad shoulders. He stood there for a moment, looking around, taking in the courthouse, the diner, the old storefronts, like he was trying to match what he saw with something in his mind. Then his eyes found me, and he stared. Not the quick glance strangers give before looking away. This was different. This was the kind of look that lingers, that studies, that searches. I felt a strange chill run through me, even in the warm afternoon sun. He crossed the street slowly, his eyes never leaving my face. When he reached the bench, he stopped just a few feet away, his hands at his sides, his mouth opening and closing like he wasn't quite sure how to begin. "Are you Walter Brooks?" he asked. I nodded. "That's me," I said. "Can I help you?" He swallowed hard, his eyes shining with something I couldn't read. "My name is Daniel," he said quietly, "and I think you might be my father." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world around me didn't disappear, but it softened, like someone had turned down the sound. The kids' laughter faded. The courthouse clock seemed to stop mid-tick. All I could see was the man standing in front of me, his face tight with nerves, his eyes searching mine like he was afraid I might vanish if he blinked. "My father," I repeated, more to myself than to him. He nodded slowly. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. I've been looking for you for a long time." I felt my hands start to shake. I tucked them under my thighs, hoping he wouldn't notice. "You'd better sit down," I said, my voice sounding far away, even to my own ears. "If you're going to say something like that." He sat beside me on the bench, leaving a little space between us, like he wasn't sure he had the right to be any closer. Up close, I could see it, the shape of his nose, the set of his jaw, something in the eyes. It was like looking at a stranger wearing pieces of my own reflection. How did you find me?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "My mother," he said. "Margaret. She passed away last year. Before she died, she told me everything. About you, about this town, about why she never said anything before." His voice cracked just a little. "She gave me your name, said you de-stayed, said if I ever wanted to know where I came from, I should come here." The name hit me like a wave. Margaret. I hadn't heard it spoken out loud in years. It felt strange and heavy in the air between us. "I never thought," I began, then stopped. I didn't even know how to finish that sentence. "I never thought I'd see you. I never thought I'd be forgiven. I never thought I'd deserve this." "I didn't know if you'd even still be alive," he said softly. But when I asked around, everyone said the same thing. "Walter Brooks. Oh yeah, he's still here. Sits by the courthouse most days." He gave a faint, nervous smile. "Seems like everybody knows you." I let out a shaky breath. "They know my name," I said. "That's about it." We sat in silence for a few seconds, the weight of all those years pressing in around us. Then he turned toward me, his eyes full of questions he'd probably been carrying his whole life. "I don't want anything from you," he said. "No money, no promises. I wanted to see you, to know you were real." I swallowed hard. "I've known about you since you were born," I said. The words came out before I could stop them. "Your mother wrote to me, told me everything." His eyes widened. "You knew," he whispered. I nodded. I knew, and I stayed anyway. He looked down at his hands, clenched in his lap. "All my life I wondered," he said. "I always felt like something was missing. My dad, the man who raised me, he was a good man. I loved him. But when I found out I was adopted, it started this question in my head I couldn't quiet. Who was he? Why didn't he want me?" I felt a sharp pain in my chest. "It wasn't that," I said quickly. "It was never that. I wanted you, more than you'll ever know, but your mother thought it was better this way. And by the time I knew, I was afraid, afraid of breaking the life you had, afraid of stepping into something I didn't understand. So I did what I've always done. I looked down at the cracked sidewalk beneath my feet. I stayed. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I wish you hadn't." The words hurt, but they didn't feel like anger. They felt like truth. "I do too," I admitted. "Every winter, every birthday, I imagined you growing up without me. I imagined what you looked like, what kind of man you'd become. I told myself I was protecting you. But the older I got, the more I wondered if I was really just protecting myself." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something soften in his eyes. "You look like me," he said, almost with surprise. "Or maybe I look like you. I don't know which way it goes." A small, broken laugh escaped me. "Either way," I said, "I suppose it's true." We talked for a long time after that, right there on the bench, with people passing by who had no idea that a lifetime was unfolding between two strangers they thought they knew. He told me about his life, about growing up in a city, about his work, about his wife and two children. Yes, children. My grandchildren. The word felt strange and wonderful in my mind, like something I wasn't sure I had the right to claim. "They don't know about you," he said. "Not yet. I didn't want to tell them until I met you first." I nodded. "That's fair." I told him about my life, too, about my parents, about the store, about never leaving, about how this town had become both my home and my hiding place. I told him things I had never told anyone else, and the more I spoke, the lighter I felt, like I had been carrying a heavy coat for decades and was finally setting it down. When the sun dipped lower and the shadows stretched across the street, he stood up. "Would you come to dinner with us?" he asked. "My family's staying at the motel just outside town. I told my wife I might have found you. She wanted to meet you if you were willing." My heart pounded. "I don't know if I'd know what to say," I admitted. "You don't have to say anything special," he said gently. "Just be there." So I went. That evening, I sat at a table with people who should have been strangers, but didn't feel like it. His wife was kind, warm, with eyes that studied me carefully, but without judgment. The children were curious, polite, a little shy. They asked me about the town, about the store, about what it was like back in the old days. And as I answered, I found myself smiling more than I had in years. At one point, Daniel raised his glass and said, "To finding answers," and everyone nodded. I went home that night with my heart full and aching all at once. I sat in my quiet kitchen and let the silence settle around me again, but it felt different now. Not empty, just calm, like the end of a long day that had finally given me something worth being tired for. They left town 2 days later. Before he got into his car, Daniel hugged me, really hugged me, not the careful kind. The kind where you hold on because you don't know when you'll get another chance. "I don't know what comes next," he said, "but I don't want to lose you again." "You won't," I said, and for once I didn't mean that I would stay. We write now. We call. He sends pictures of the kids. They call me Grandpa, though sometimes they stumble over it, still getting used to the word. And every time I hear their voices, I feel something inside me settle into place. I still sit on the bench outside the courthouse most afternoons. People still wave, still nod, still say, "How you doing, Walter?" like they always have. They still think they know me. And maybe they know a little more now, even if they don't realize it. Because when I sit there, I'm not just Walter Brooks, the old man from the hardware store. I'm a son who stayed, a man who loved and lost, a father who waited far too long, and finally, a grandfather who was found. Everyone in this town knows my name. But now, at last, someone knows my story. And that, I've learned, makes all the difference.